contact and a lovely flip pass there to Matt Perry, showing not only sleight of hand, look at this, one-handed pass, out the tackle, backhanded flip, hits Perry.
Could a Pacific Nations team ever win the Rugby World Cup? That's Fiji, Samoa or Tonga. Historically, they've put in some strong performances and some not so strong performances, but in this video we're going to summarise could they do it, so make sure to subscribe and leave a like and comment your thoughts down. So one good way of deciding whether a team could perform well at a certain World Cup is to look at their World Cup history, look at how they've done in the past. So first of all, we're going to start with Tonga and have a look at how they have done. They've so far competed at 7 tournaments. They've played at every single tournament except for the 1991 tournament, which they didn't qualify for. If you want to know about the Rugby World Cup history for the first World Cup, there's a link in the description down below to check out the history of the Rugby World Cup of 1987. So they've only managed to get 2 wins at the Rugby World Cup. The first came against the Ivory Coast at Rugby World Cup in 1995, and the second they actually beat Italy at World Cup in 1999. That's a year just before Italy joined up in the Six Nations. Looking at Samoa's record, Samoa actually have quite a respectable and quite an impressive record at the World Cup. They've been at the World Cup 7 times. Their first appearance was in 1991, so didn't get invited controversially to that first Rugby World Cup. And they've managed to reach the quarterfinals in 1991 and 1995. They beat Wales at the Cardiff Arms Park. As a Welshman, it pains me to say, but they did 13 points to 6 and beat Argentina in the same tournament 35 points to 12, which is quite an impressive score. And they did the same in the 1991 World Cup against the same opponents in Argentina. Then in 1995 they went to beat the Italians 42-18 very comfortably, and then beat Argentina again 32-26 before losing in the quarterfinals against eventual champions South Africa. The more recent history has not been quite as successful. Between 2007 and 2015 they haven't managed to get out of the group, but picked up a few wins here and there. Fiji also have a decent record at Rugby World Cups. Of course, the most famous victory came in 2007 as they beat Wales. It still pains me to say they beat us, and they went on to play against South Africa in the quarterfinals before losing against the eventual winners. They had finished second in their pool behind eventual champions New Zealand back in 1999, but they had to go through a quarter-final playoff against England and lost that one. So as you can see, the teams have been inconsistent across World Cups. Samoa showing probably the most consistency, then Fiji and then Tonga. But we're now going to have a look at recent results over the past 18 months to 2 years against some of the big boys, against some of the teams you expect them to win, and see how they've done to give us an idea of what kind of form they are coming into this year's Rugby World Cup. So let's start once again with Samoa. Their recent results, they managed to beat Tonga in their only game of 2019 so far in Apia. Tonga were actually winning up until about 2 minutes to go, and Samoa came and won right at the end. The conditions of the pitch were awful. If you've seen the game, you know what I'm talking about. In 2018 they also beat the Germans and the Spanish, which you'd expect them to do, both away games, but you'd expect them to win that, and they won it fairly comfortably. But they lost narrowly 30 points to 29 to the USA, and then 16 points to 15 against Georgia. So you'd say that you think Tonga are probably at their level, the USA are also at the level, and Georgia are probably at the level of Samoa at the minute. So very close games, but they will be disappointed to lose them games. Now we'll have a look at Tonga. Tonga in 29 have 1 test so far, as I said, losing in the last minute against Samoa. In 2018 though, they had a little decent record, beat Samoa twice, beat Fiji once, but a heavy loss to Wales' second string side in Cardiff in the November test back in 2018. And then they lost narrowly also to Georgia. So a mixed 2018 for them, 2019, beaten teams that they should probably have beaten, and then lost against teams which you'd expect them to lose against. And then when we have a look at Fiji, some really good results for them against Samoa and Georgia, but again heavy losses to Wales and also a heavy loss to a second string Scotland side. But their greatest victory possibly in the history of Fijian rugby, except for that Wales game, which I always seem to mention. They beat the French in Paris 21-14. Yes, France were in absolute disarray. They had an awful year, and they had an awful Six Nations after this game. But what a result this was for Fijian rugby, an incredible result for that nation, an amazing result. But just as recently as this month of August 2019, they had a really heavy defeat against Japan, and that shows there's still a lot of work to do. So there's no way we can deny the technical and the natural ability and the physique that these players possess from these Pacific nations. They are quite simply the ultimate specimen to be playing rugby and should be doing so well. We have to take into consideration the size of the nation and the population, which is usually under around 300,000. So it's a very small nation, so for the size that they do incredibly well. But you always feel as if there's something going on behind the scenes, and the biggest issue I think for these Pacific nations is losing players to neighbouring countries and other global powerhouses across the world. I have in front of me here a list of players who are eligible to play for their nation by birth, so for either Tonga, Samoa or Fiji, who currently play for some big nations in the world. So first of all, we'll go through Australia. They have Alan Alaalatoa, Sekou Kepu, Taniele Tupou, and they have Tevita Kuridrani. Now Kuridrani was born in Suva in Fiji, so is eligible to play for Fiji, and Tupou was also born in Tonga but plays for the Aussies. Alaalatoa has a father from Tonga, and Kepu also has a father from Tonga. From New Zealand we have Via Vivati, who has only been recently capped, hasn't got that many caps, but he was born in Tonga, and Severis, who was also born in Nadi in Fiji. So two players in the current squad for the Rugby Championships who could have played for either Fiji or Tonga. Moving on to England, England have three players. They have Nathan Hughes, who was born in Fiji, Joe Kokona-Singa, and also Manu Tuilangi. The Vunipola brothers, of course, were actually born, one was born in New Zealand and one was born in Australia, but their father was actually the captain of the Tongan national team. So they have links there through their father who they could play for. And then for Wales, Faletau, born in Tonga, grew up in England and in Wales, and then decided to play for Wales, but won't be at this Rugby World Cup because of injury. So what are the reasons why these players decide to jump ship and head to a different country? Well, a lot of time it's about money, and you can't blame them, because in that culture it seems that if you earn the most money, you support your family back home, you send all your money back home. There's a brilliant interview with Dan Leo, the former Samoan player. I'll link that in the description down below. It's by Joe, who do House of Rugby. Link in the description down below. It's super interesting to hear about how the culture back there impacts the way a player makes a decision about his future. So it seems that money is a big driving force, that they send this money back home, and the people who offer them the most money they tend to go for. We saw the protest with Samoa against England, where it was said that the Samoans would be lucky to get maybe £1,000 for representing Samoa, while an England international would get £20,000 for representing England. And we saw this joint protest about that. Lots of players with Tonga recently in the last Pacific Nations Cup weren't paid on time, and so the manager, the coach, almost threatened to quit. It seems that there's this pressure to really pick the team that gives you the most money. It's the same with club rugby. Big teams in France like Toulon or Clermont, all these different teams will offer you more money than they've ever seen in their lives, and yet they decide to abandon their nation and go and play for this club, and decide in the contract not to have a clause to play for their nation when it is time to play. So as you can see, there's so many players that I haven't mentioned as well. Manonu could have played, Sonny Bill Williams. All these players have links to these Pacific nations, and yet they haven't decided to play for them. So what is it looking like at this year's Rugby World Cup? Well, it's going to be very, very tough for all of them. Fiji are in a group with Australia and Wales. Samoa then have England, France and Argentina, and it's just going to be super tough for them to be able to get out of the group and to be able to do something in this tournament. But we know we're going to be entertained, we know they're going to be passionate, they're going to be physical, we love to see their war dances before the matches. but it feels as if that this World Cup, no way, they're just not going to win the World Cup. But will we see it in my lifetime? I'd like to think so. With the right resources, with the right pathway, maybe put Super Rugby team in one of them nations, it could make a huge difference. But what do you guys think? Do you think that a Pacific Nations team could ever win the World Cup? Let me know in the description down below, subscribe and leave the video a like. Thanks for watching.